What an establishment needs when it gets corrupt and its ideology gets hollow. It needs a change, a breath of fresh air to survive and get back on its track. Maybe Rishi Sunak is that change for Britain's dead and deceased establishment. And maybe in the process of saving Britain, he could also revive Tories' glory and rewrite their fate by doing everything Tories have been known to avoid, and by touching everything that in Tories' Bible is untouchable. For instance, Russia. It is possible that Sunak has already taken the first step towards it and is on his way to extending an olive branch to Russia. Hi and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Atul Mishra. Let's begin. In a recent news report by The Telegraph, a Russian oligarch by the name of Petr Evan has been granted living expenses of £60,000 a month by the UK government to maintain his luxurious lifestyle. Along with that, the HM Treasury has also authorized the release of £388,000 payment to settle pressing debts. So all in all, approximately £1 million are unfrozen from Petr Evans' assets to meet his basic needs and those of his dependent family. For context, Petr Evan, who was called an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin by the UK government itself, has been photographed with Putin on the day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He was blacklisted by EU in the wake of 2022 Russia-Ukraine conflict. After that, National Crime Agency or the NCA started investigating him over his alleged involvement in suspicious transactions. Reportedly, he was dodging UK's and EU's sanctions on him and using his business accounts to evade them to help the Russian leader and his government. His assets have been frozen since then, and he was subjected to both financial prohibitions and a travel ban. The case about the freezing of assets was ongoing in the High Court, but now the court has set aside the terms of freezing assets. Mrs. Justice Collins Rice said it may in an appropriate case be relevant to consider the prospects that other Treasury licenses not yet applied for could permit the availability of funds not subject to AFOs for meeting basic needs and reasonable living expenses. The judge added a case where an applicant has considerable wealth and complex arrangements for applying it may be an appropriate case. The Treasury's decision has been condemned widely by those who criticize Putin and his regime. MP Chris Brandt said, "The government boasts of its sanctions regime, but it seems they are quietly letting Putin's ally oligarchs carry on regardless." So now the question arises how a country so conservative in its stances has suddenly taken such a dynamic side. What has changed in the nation? Certainly not the government, as it is still run by the Conservatives, the Tories, and Tories also haven't changed. It is one of the oldest parties in Great Britain and is chosen by Brits for its conservative approach. It stands for the original Brits and the UK, and this party sees Russia as an acute threat. So what has changed in the last few days? The Prime Minister. Yes, Great Britain has just got a brown person like me and second-generation immigrant Prime Minister in the form of Rishi Sunak. Sunak now joins the league of those global leaders who do not come from any establishments. To be more specific, every country has a set of politicians called established politicians. They have their roots in the politics of that country for decades. But in the 21st century, two world leaders changed this legacy of some dynasty rulings under the cloak of democracy. One is the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the other one is the former President of the US, Donald Trump. Both these leaders came from no political backing but challenged the establishment of their countries. A miracle happened and Rishi Sunak became Britain's leader, and he is the one who doesn't tick the boxes of the set conventional standards like Boris Johnson. Rishi Sunak's roots and his identity make him different from all other prime ministers of Britain. He knows that every party to remain in power makes something or someone a black swan and keeps targeting those in order to keep receiving voters' validation. For instance, for the US, the black swan is Russia. Every party there kept projecting Russia as the collective enemy of the US, a convention that started with the Cold War. However, when Donald Trump came to power, he rejected the set norm and never went down the black hole of blaming Russia for every minor inconvenience in Washington. Now, Rishi Sunak might be doing the same thing. He has no legacy or history to share with Tories. He knows that what the UK needs right now is to survive. Sunak might not be afraid of taking the road less traveled and have no qualms about befriending Russia. The goal is to keep the UK alive, and maybe joining hands with Russia can help Sunak achieve just that. Among the EU member states, the UK has some of the most difficult relations with Russia. But if they agree to open trade talks with each other, UK can start to get out of its miseries of rising inflation and other serious economic issues. Both the UK and Russia still have mutual interests in tackling a variety of security, geopolitical, and environmental challenges. So Sunak has taken the first step towards that by relieving Vladimir Putin's closest ally of some restrictions and by going against the EU's and NATO's chosen stance. It will be interesting to see if UK and Russia start getting on the same table. And if Sunak achieves this, he will go down in the history books for bringing a renaissance in UK and, of course, the Tories.